Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Neighbor keeps spitting on my property, so I called the cops on her. After that, am I the jerk for arguing with my husband's doctor and acting like a Karen? And after that, I don't work here, but now you get to come to my work. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to spit on anyone's property. Who's gonna stop me, Reddit boy? So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for news stories from Reddit every single day. Neighbor keeps spitting on my property, so I called the cops on her. I'm a mom of 3 kids. My oldest is 12. We live on the second floor of a 3-floor building. It's a crappy apartment and we're in the process of finding somewhere else. Due to it being a crappy apartment, the front entrance is 100% inaccessible, so myself and the 3rd floor unit have to use the side entrance. However, the 1st floor neighbor, the one that got arrested, has another entrance off her porch and just chooses not to use it when she chain smokes. She sits right at the side door, blocking it, chain smoking and spitting all over the place. I can't even tell you how many times I've had to tell her to move away from the doors so that I can bring my kids inside without them having to breathe in the smoke that's trapped in the closed-off entryway. So the other day, I finally went down and talked to her directly about it, because she started leaving half-burnt cigarettes on the windowsill that she puts out but not completely, and I was concerned over a fire hazard and that being the only exit, unless we were to jump from our back deck and possibly get hurt. She was nice to my face, basically beating around the bush, and just started trash-talking the landlord to me as if I give 2 hoots. I just cut her off and asked her to smoke from her back porch. She said okay. Well, today I'm walking down to get my kids on the bus, and there is the neighbor, in the entryway, smoking while scrolling on her phone. The kids looked at me, and I told them to just go. So they pushed past her, and she acts offended, staring at us, and then she spits inches away from us. She starts apologizing, but I just called the cops. They showed up and ended up arresting her for spitting at us. She told them she hadn't intentionally, but they arrested her anyways, and her daughter came flying out of the house, losing it on me because I've scared her son, who's a 1-year-old. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk if you did the right thing. Forget her and her daughter. Am I the jerk for arguing with my husband's doctor and acting like a Karen? My husband has a sore foot. No injury or medical condition that would explain the pain, but he hasn't been able to walk properly for about a week. Being the absolute pain in my butt that he is, he's refused to go to the doctor until today. Apparently, he preferred to just complain to me. It's gotten progressively more swollen looking, and today it's turned a funny color, and he can't put any weight on it. So I called our GP, who has sent him to the walk-in clinic at our local hospital. We finally get seen, and the doctor refused to even examine it. Told him without even looking at the foot that it was just a sprain, and he wasn't going to prescribe him any painkillers, so not to ask. Then he started demonstrating some kind of exercises that involved going up and down on tiptoes and flexing the toes. I asked if he would please just look at it, because it's nearly gone black in some spots and looks similar to how my wrist looked when I broke it a few years ago. He huffed at me and asked where my medical degree was from. I demanded to see another doctor or his senior. I was the jerk here because it wasn't me being treated, so I get that he thought I was pushy. Husband would have accepted the doctor's instructions without any questions about actually needing to be examined. Doctor left, and we heard him outside the cubicle telling the senior doctor that they have a confrontational spouse who thinks her WebMD searching qualifies her to instruct real doctors on how to practice medicine. He also states that he suspects my husband of exaggeration to get meds. By the time the other doctor arrives, I'm seething, and I lay out exactly what went on and explained I only want someone to look at the foot before sending us away. He looks, cue x-rays, an MRI, the good painkillers, and a walking boot cast thing with potential to need surgery because he's got 7 stress fractures in that foot, probably from running. Admittedly, worse than they needed to be because he didn't get any treatment when it first started to hurt. Second doctor and someone from the hospital admin came and apologized for the first doctor and asked if we want to make a formal complaint. So I did, because the outcome of his not listening to the patient or family could have been worse. Husband did not. Husband said later that the first doctor may get sacked because of me complaining, and I should have just left it because no real harm was done. Was I the jerk for complaining? I don't usually have Karen tendencies, but he was just so patronizing and dismissive, and I kept thinking, what if it was a young mother with a sick baby and he dismissed it? Not everyone would stand their ground, and there could be serious consequences. Edit. Thank you for all the comments and awards. I did not expect this to go as mental as it did. I've shown hubby the post, and he's starting to realize how serious it could have been and is going to email the admin guy we saw this afternoon. He gave us his contact details for my complaint. He's also agreed that delaying treatment the way he did was incredibly stupid and has decided to take up the counseling referral with the GP, so he will be less useful in future medical situations. Thankfully, we were eventually given appropriate treatment, and hopefully the follow-up will be positive. I'll stick an update on here if anything interesting to report. Once again, thanks for setting my mind at ease and sharing your opinions. Not the jerk. You were right to be insistent. The doctor was not doing his job. You did what you had to do. I'm going to add that your husband is a huge jerk here too. Not taking care of your health and making yourself a burden on your spouse is downright selfish. He needs a stern talking to. At the very least, you need to stop enabling him. In the future, stop dealing with these instances. If he dares complain, call him out on the need to take care of himself and not to be a burden to you. OP. I accept that my husband should have sought help much earlier, but he wasn't actually being a burden apart from complaining. Long and tedious background, but he actually has a genuine fear of hospitals, so tends to either avoid them, or if he's there, he'll accept whatever is said to him in order to get out as fast as possible. He definitely has his jerk moments, but where hospitals are concerned, he is genuinely in need of an advocate, which is what I try to be. Your husband's mental health may not be his fault, but it is his responsibility. He needs to get a handle of this. He doesn't get to walk around for days on a foot with fractures and not take care of it. OP. I completely agree. However, that's a battle for another day. A day when I'm able to remain calm and discuss it rationally, and not while I'm riled up and emotional about what could have happened. Also not the best idea whilst I'm slightly peeved at what I'm going to have to actually run around at. Also not the best idea whilst I'm slightly peeved that I'm going to have to actually run around after him and his gimpy foot now. Not the jerk. Honestly, the doctor should be fired. He totally dismissed yours and your husband's concerns. Progressive foot pain getting worse over time. Discoloration of the skin. Cannot bear weight on the foot. Husband is a runner. I think most medical personnel and laymen would agree that an actual physical examination of the foot was in order, which this guy didn't even bother to do. You were right to ask for another doctor. Good luck to your husband, and I hope his healing goes well. Not the jerk. First, you are not being a Karen. Being a Karen is making something non-existent into an issue and/or being a jerk for no reason. Your husband's foot needed to be looked at, and the fact that the first doctor didn't is their fault, not yours. I'm so sick of the overuse of the term Karen. People use it now when they don't like someone. That's not the original use for it. Pushing to get proper medical care is not being a Karen. Well, what would you have done in this situation? Would you have put in a complaint against the first doctor or not? Please let us know. I'd make sure he gets fired. If you don't care about your patients, you have no business being a doctor. I don't work here, but now you get to come to my work. I'm a correctional officer and I work nights. After work, I normally just go home and sleep to get ready for my next 12-hour shift. However, on my days off, I take the time to do chores and housework. On this day, I did not have the night off, so I get done what I could before going to bed. So I went home and picked up my wife and kiddos to go grocery shopping. We get to the store and start doing the usual. A lady comes up to me and my family and starts asking for directions to items. Some I know and some I don't, so I tell her where the things I know are and I apologize for the things I don't. Now, mind you, I'm in full uniform. Taser cross draw, cuffs on each hip, fogger on left thigh, spray, and all the other items I use at work. On top of all that, I smell of peppers, sweat, mold, and rust, as the facility I work at is old and moist. She seems upset but walks away. We continue shopping, and after a while, we meet up with the lady and she spots us and comes down, but this time she's upset. She starts screaming that I'm the worst employee ever and I should be fired for not helping. She continues on about how I should be catching shoplifters or back watching the cameras instead of flirting with this lady. Yeah, she's one of those. I interrupt her rant and I said the usual words of, I don't work here. She of course fails to hear them, as this is the usual on this sub, and she continues her rant, yelling and screaming that she picked me to help her because I'm the asset protection and I should know where everything is. I ask my wife to take the kids and find a manager for this Karen. The lady, from now on known as Karen, is none too pleased to hear her secret identity outed and increases her volume. I try to explain to Karen that I'm a jailer, not loss prevention at a grocery store. I tell her to go buzz off and find someone that actually works here. I then turn my back and start to walk away when I'm nailed in the back of the head and I fall forward in a full face plant. I'm hurting, dazed, and I can feel glass all around me. I roll onto my back and feel around. It's pasta sauce. This jerk just brained me with pasta sauce. She's still yelling and screaming and raising another jar to throw. I grab my taser, aim, and pop. Down she goes. Hard. I get up, I stumble over, I flip her around and cuff her. She's out like a light. My guess is the fall. I then sit back down and take an inventory of myself. I'm hurt pretty badly from my head, but I seem to be all right. My wife, the customers, and management show up as I'm checking over Karen. I pulled my med kit off the back of my belt to get to the smelling salts. I then tell them to call 911, and I continue checking on Karen. She's awake, dazed, and blissfully quiet. The rest goes as expected. The police arrive, they question me, question her, watch the cameras, and I refuse medical treatment, but I do press charges, as my wife is a boss. I say that with reverence. She's medically trained and will take good care of me. I go home. She asked if I wanted staples or glue. I chose glue. She glues my head and we take a shower, go to sleep, and she wakes me up from time to time, which I know isn't the best idea. But hey, a few days later I'm writing this, so I ended up all right. I get a call a couple hours before my shift ordering me to come in early to talk to rank. Dreading this, I follow my orders and get up, shaved, showered, and dressed. I go in and have to explain the whole thing again and again. Then they show me the video from the store. It's exactly as I explained, though I did note she could throw far better than I could have dreamed. They order me not to wear my uniform outside of work and tell me I'll be working in booking tonight. I'm not very good at booking, but look forward to the training and activity of it, as the rest of the facility is slow and boring. 11 p.m. rolls around, and who do I see being escorted into booking but Karen? I start to talk, but my sergeant taps me and hushes me. He talks to the deputy bringing her in, and they start doing the paperwork while I watch and try to learn as much as possible. She gets charged. Now Karen gets to live at my workplace. I don't get to work in the female zones, but the booking process was fun, though I wasn't allowed to do anything but watch. After she's booked, I'm told to report to another zone, and I end up finishing the night. Now for the past few days, pasta jokes have been in abundance, and her nickname is Pasta Lady. Her court date isn't for a while, and she's reportedly not getting along with the other inmates. Am I the jerk for judging a couple who came into the restaurant I work in? I, 22 female, am a waitress at a restaurant. I've experienced all kinds of customers since I work as a waitress for the past 3 years. I actually love my job. One of the worst kinds of customers we get are the couples who sit on the same side of the table. There's an inside joke between all of us servers. Many servers I've talked to have the same thoughts on how it's weird when couples do that. Being in the industry for 3 years now, I've found a solution to that. Whenever I spot a couple, I have them seated at tables where it's impossible for them to sit next to each other. And if we are full and that's not possible for whatever reason, and a table like that isn't available, then we have to endure the couple sitting side by side. The reason servers are so judgy about this is that we find it very weird. Can't you just go a few hours without touching each other? Plus, sitting on opposite sides is more romantic. So, I've stopped hiding my distaste for couples like this for a long time now. But most of the time, these people are so absorbed into each other, they don't even realize how we are indeed judging them. On Thursday, I had evening shift. A couple walks in, I sit them on opposite sides, but they sat on the same booth again. My coworkers and I started laughing, and the couple noticed us but didn't say anything. Throughout the whole time, my coworkers were joking about it. We even asked them if they were waiting for other people, and is that why they've left the other booth empty? But they said no, it's just the two of them. At one point, the girl called on me and asked if I have a problem. I said, no problem, why would there be a problem? She then started scolding me on how rude my behavior and the rest of the staff's behavior is, and how she and her fiance know that we are judging them and that we've ruined their experience since they couldn't enjoy their date and their meal without us constantly staring at them. I apologized for this, and I just explained how it's not personally against them and how it's an inside joke servers have. The guy then said he doesn't give a hoot about this, and we are very unprofessional. They paid and left. Later that night, we saw that they had left a negative review and described their experience. Our manager called us in and scolded us. Never in my 3 years have I gotten in trouble over this. Am I the jerk? You're 22 years old. Don't you think it's time you acted like it? Are y'all just bitter because you don't have anyone? You're the jerk. I worked in restaurants for 20 years. I wouldn't ever step foot back in one because I know too much. But if I did, I would make sure to sit on the same side as my husband just because. Same here. I waited tables and bartended for years when I was in college. This was never a big deal in my restaurant, and we actually thought it was cute, especially with older couples. I can't imagine being so bitter that I'd make fun of people like this. She should not be working in the service industry. I waited tables in Branson. Once had a couple in their 80s come in on their honeymoon. They squeezed themselves on the same side of a two-top because they don't have as much time left. It was so adorable that I remember it 20 years later. I hope they're still going strong. Jumping on, hoping that OP sees that lots of people are either hard of hearing or have hearing loss to some degree. I learned that a lot of people sit next to each other because restaurants are loud and it's easier to hear. And I learned that on my 3rd day when one of my tables explained that's why they personally sit that way. I'm sure OP will figure it out when she's a little older. I worked at a medium-price international restaurant chain for years. Some do consider it even a nice restaurant. I personally don't like to sit next to each other when I'm with a significant other, but I never cared when my tables did it, which was really quite often. It didn't change anything for me as their server. You're the jerk. The worst kind of customers you get are couples who sit on the same side of the table? Okay, why? What do they do that's worse than a lot of things that servers complain about? Are they loud, rude, or just sitting in a way that you don't approve of? So you all make up this thing about people who sit on the same side of the table. You actively seat couples places whenever you can at tables that they can't sit side by side at, and endure it when you can't. You find it weird. You think they should face each other and be more romantic. You openly show your distaste for them and even laugh at them. You are indeed judging them and think it should matter to them. Are you for real? You're the jerk in spades. Your job is to effectively serve food, not judge and ridicule people. Personally, I would not care if a server judged me for how I sat with my husband because it has nothing to do with you. None of your beeswax. You're the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the couple? Please let us know. I'm just wondering if they left a tip. Only do accounting work during your 2 weeks notice. After working at a toxic office job for a few years, I decided it was time for me to leave. I gave a bit more than 2 weeks notice and started to organize my myriad of tasks to hand off. I was an accounts payable assistant, and the company had created my position and added various tasks with other departments over the years. I helped with accounting, inventory, audits, customer service, marketing, sales, and events. My primary manager, we'll call her Barb, was the accounting manager, and there was always a struggle because she had assigned the extra work to me, but then refused to acknowledge that I did jobs for the other departments than hers. She was the primary reason for me leaving. Every day, I ask her if we can have a meeting to discuss my different tasks, how I've organized them, and how to complete them, as no one does these tasks in the company but me. She refuses to meet with me and reminds me to keep up with deadlines. No problem. For the next 2 weeks, Barb doesn't remove a single task from my plate. She refuses to meet with me for any reason and consistently sends condescending emails about the lack of work effort she's seen from me. I don't have the emails saved anymore, but they all included the same message. I'm the boss, just do your job. I brought this to the owner's attention since I worked closely with her, about how I felt like there was no bridge to the next person in my position. I was told, Barb runs the accounting department, so do what she says. Yes, ma'am. I showed up every day and I worked as if I wasn't leaving. Other managers asked me who was taking over tasks I handled for them. I referred them to Barb, who told them that she handled accounting, not their departments, and to stop wasting her time. She then told me to only work on accounting-related tasks as that was the position, regardless of the last few years of my tasks being spread across the company. I got this in writing and printed a few copies to cover myself. On my last day, Barb called me in her office and scolded me for ignoring 75% of my duties. Specifically, inventory was due that day, and I hadn't begun it. I reminded her of her accounting work-only demand, while she claimed she wasn't referring to inventory too. She told me to compile a list of all the non-accounting jobs I handled, to which I was prepared with a list. Many of these had deadlines missed or coming soon, but I had ignored per her instructions. I was told that if I didn't meet my deadlines for the week, she would not give me a good reference. She also told me to stay as late as I needed to finish up. I didn't need her reference, and I wasn't staying late on my last day. I forwarded the email of her telling me not to complete any other jobs to the owner, along with a list of missed or close deadlines that wouldn't be met now. Then I clocked out and left and never returned. This was years ago, and from what I've heard, she still runs the accounting department for them. I was the one blamed for tasks not being complete. Oh well. Am I the jerk for telling my husband I won't cook for him again if he chooses to eat his coworker's meal over mine? Hear me out. My husband, Jesse, who's 31, has been bringing home meals that his female coworker, Nellie, cooks for him. Now, I'm not the best cook, and Jesse's made it clear, but he still eats what I cook every day. What I noticed with Nellie was that she tends to take every opportunity to point out how weak and tasteless my cooking is. Jesse would say nothing except steer the conversation towards something else they both relate to while I'm sitting there wallowing in my misery, thinking about what she said. Also, she once asked what was another chore I was good at, and Jesse said ironing his suits. She, in response, joked about having him send her a suit of his so he could see how good she is at ironing too. I rolled my eyes hard, but at least Jesse agreed that was weird. Last week, Jesse came home with a new meal she cooked. I told him I already cooked dinner and asked what he was going to do with the meal. He told me he was going to eat it for dinner. Not gonna lie, I was getting a bit irritated, and he must have noticed because he said he promised Nellie he'd eat it for dinner, and that she asked him to take a pic of the empty plate later to confirm that he had actually eaten it. I was baffled, like completely baffled at this. I told him one thing and one thing only. Told him that if he chose to eat Nellie's meal over the dinner I cooked, then this would be the last time I cooked for him. He started moaning about how I was being unfair and putting him in a rough place. He stalled and didn't give a clear answer till I saw him walk past me later when I set the table and prepared dinner and put her meal in the microwave. I felt so awful I almost cried. I then told him that from now on, I won't cook for him anymore since he made his choice. I obviously upset him because he went off on me, calling me childish and pathetic to make this about my ego. I got up from my chair and told him I owed him nothing and that he made his decision, and so did I. He snapped and said that this was ridiculous and that Nellie was just doing a nice thing for him, while as my behavior was disgraceful and disgusting. He then went into the bedroom and I rushed after him, but he shouted, "Leave me alone," then proceeded to shut the door and hasn't been speaking to me since. His mom knew about the argument and called, begging me to be more patient and not make any decisions I might regret later. She agreed that Nellie was overstepping and firmly believes she's the problem, and so I shouldn't be hard on her son. But mother-in-law is incredibly biased, meaning in her eyes, her son is a saint who can do no wrong. So that's that. I feel like I overreacted and really messed it up when I pushed him like that. Not the jerk, but you and your husband need to have a serious talk about boundaries in your marriage. The issue isn't the food, it's his creating a relationship with another woman and being willing to hurt you to continue that relationship. This isn't a healthy friendship, and he is not being respectful of your marriage. And this relationship with the other woman seems to be built on criticizing and undermining OP. I would never continue to spend time with someone who puts down my wife on a routine basis. Just yikes. This story ends with the situation being made as clear as daylight. OP's husband has to decide whose feelings he's worried about more, OP's or his coworkers. And he chose the coworker. OP, your husband is showing you who he is and who matters to him. It's not you. You deserve better. Your husband is more concerned with Nellie's feelings than yours. Red flag. Your mother-in-law agrees that Nellie is overstepping, but that you need to go easier on her son, your husband, while he encourages another woman's inappropriate attention. Red flag. Is your mother-in-law going to tell you to just get over it when you walk in and find Nellie with your husband? Because that is where this little "I'm better than your wife's" game is heading. Not the jerk, and make sure you have some money set aside to protect yourself. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. You gotta watch out for Nellies, they're always scheming. Haven't you seen Little House on the Prairie? Only use company-provided software? No problem. Many years ago, I was a kitchen manager for a very popular restaurant concept. My location was fairly busy, and there were a lot of office-related tasks, including placing food orders twice a week. Over the years, I developed a spreadsheet to make the ordering process faster and ensure that when I was on vacation, proper food levels were maintained. After 6 years and multiple praises from higher-ups about efficiency, We got a new district manager, DM. This person came in and was very by the book. Everything had to be done as per company policy, and we could not deviate. One day, the DM noticed I was using my spreadsheet to calculate my food order for the week. I was told it was not company sanctioned and I could not use it. I explained that it saved me 2 hours each time, and I used that time to help others. That did not sit well with the DM, and I was told to stop using it immediately. The DM asked the general manager, GM, if I had any other shortcuts that were unauthorized. Because the GM wanted to stay on the DM's good side, they spilled the beans on all of my non-compliant methods I used. Now, I was no longer allowed to use any of the time-saving tools I created. Cue malicious compliance. As I was no longer allowed to use these tools, I emailed them to myself and added a password to lock them down on the work computer. No longer usable. But I added a bit extra to the spreadsheet to make it self-destruct if someone attempted to hack the files. The self-destruct would delete the contents of the file along with the contents of my personal folder. Time to get a new job. I gave 6 weeks notice and was greeted by the DM the next day. I was asked to turn in my keys and was promptly fired. 2 days later, it was order day. The GM called me and asked for the password to the spreadsheet I could not use. Since no one but me knew how to order without the spreadsheets, they were panicking. I promptly told the GM I was unable to help, and if they wanted the password, the DM would have to call me personally and ask. That never happened. I got multiple calls and texts from the GM, other managers, and even a DM from another district. They even called my wife. They tried to guess the password, and on the third try, even without a warning prompt, the program worked perfectly. All contents of my personal file were permanently deleted, and the spreadsheet deleted its contents and saved itself with no contents. Now, there was nothing I could do. They were warned, multiple missed calls after that. I found out later that the GM had to spend 4 hours doing the food order and had to pay a late fee for ordering late. The DM was demoted 3 months later. I like to think it started with me, but I'm sure there were other factors. Edit. For those asking, I do not have the file. It was 10 years ago, and it was nothing that cannot be found on the internet. Also, this was an Excel spreadsheet used to calculate weekly product usage and replenishment suggestions. It was not integrated into the company ordering system. I did not need it. It just saved me time from having to do some calculations for 400 plus items. Each manager is taught how to place orders the company way. It's just, I was the only one to do it for over 6 years. All of the historical information was intact and could have been used to assist, but they knew I had a simpler method and wanted to make it easy for themselves. Everyone is entitled to their opinions, and I appreciate the different views. What is done, and I regret nothing. Thank you. Mailbox Revenge. This didn't start out as a quest for vengeance. We just wanted mail delivery to our house. Vengeance came as a byproduct, but it was truly delightful nonetheless. So, mailbox story time. This happened back in 1982 for the record. My family moved to a very rural area on a gravel road. No one had previously lived there, so it was a battle just getting mail delivery in the first place. My folks went several rounds with the local postmaster. He was somewhat enamored by his own power and very much a rules to the letter kind of guy. Every I must be dotted, every T crossed, and if there's so much as a semicolon out of place, you'll have to start all over again. He seemed to have made it his personal mission to make getting mail delivery to a new address as difficult as humanly possible. Ultimately, my folks managed to fill out the paperwork to his satisfaction, and he begrudgingly allowed us to put up a box and receive mail delivery at our new home. Dad was extremely careful in the placement of our box and making absolutely certain it was the exact height, precise placement from the road, etc. to avoid annoying our local postmaster any more than we already had. There are, or at least were, very specific rules about rural mailboxes. Dad followed every single one. That first mailbox was perfect. The man who drove the road grader was as annoyed as the local postmaster, as he now had a new driveway to accommodate. We suspect that's why he had it out for our mailbox. After the road grader had demolished 3 of our mailboxes, Dad got upset. Previously, he had used the most basic design, just a post in the ground with a box on top. Now he was motivated. Dad got a hold of a 9-foot-long section of metal pipe. It's 4 inches in diameter, outer measurement, and has 3/4 inch thick walls. I have no idea what this was originally intended for, but I know how Dad used it. He dug a hole 5.5 feet deep. He welded an upside-down tripod shape, think open umbrella, to the bottom of the pole and dropped it into the 6-foot wide hole. Each welded-on leg was about 3 feet of some kind of rebar, and there were 5 such spokes. He then dropped some huge rocks on top of the tripod shape to hold it in place. The empty spaces around the huge rocks were filled in with gravel, and he dumped sand to fill in the air gaps. Then he filled the rest of the hole in with dirt and mounted the mailbox on top of the post. 3 days after Dad installed the new mailbox, we heard the road grader coming down the road. Our house is a quarter mile from the road, but we heard the loud clang from inside. We also heard the yelling from inside. No one went down to look until they heard the road grader drive away. When they did, the box itself was slightly dented on one side, but it was still firmly upright and functional. 3 weeks later, we received a bill from the township for a bent grader blade. It was accompanied by a letter informing us that we had caused damage to city property because our mailbox was installed incorrectly. It would need to be moved, and we were liable for a bill of a couple $1,000s worth of repairs. Here's where it becomes pro-revenge instead of petty. Recall the fact that the local postmaster was annoyed with us over our battle to get mail delivery? Mom had made a point of each time we reinstalled the mailbox, taking photographs down to the post office and having the local postmaster sign off approval of the height, placement, etc. She had done the same with Dad's super post and had documented signed approval of the box, dated the day before the road grader had bent his blade trying to demolish the box. She submitted copies of the invoice for the grader blade and the letter stating that the damage was our fault because our mailbox was incorrectly placed to the post office. She also submitted copies of the official post office approval of the box to the township. The jerk postmaster was also quite prideful and became furious that his authority was being called into question by some podunk township. As far as he was concerned, the township wasn't questioning my parents, they were stating that his judgment was wrong. I don't know what went down between the postmaster and the township, but we received a second letter from the post office reiterating their approval of our mailbox. We also got a formal apology from the township and noticed that the road grader's contract had been terminated because he had lied about damage to city property. It was worded with a tone that said, "Please don't sue us because a contracted employee damaged your property." For the record, that post Dad installed nearly 40 years ago is still standing. We've replaced the box on top many times. That post, however, has now wrecked 2 cars and a truck in addition to that long ago road grader. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.